Okay, well, first and foremost, truly want to thank everyone for coming. We know that there are always a lot of conferences, professional development opportunities, and perhaps that has been one of the positive things about over the past year and a half as folks have become more comfortable with this format and doing more in this format. But again, we know that means you have a lot of options. So we really appreciate you being here. So I'll start off by introducing myself. My name is Laura Wise, and I'm the current president of the Michigan Career Development Association, starting this past July. It's been a very great experience thus far. Been on the board for a few years, and many of our current board members have been serving with the organization for the past few years. So you'll see the list here. Past president April Kolkowski, president-elect Krista Harmon, Treasurer Amy Zidanowski, Secretary David McCall, K-12 representative and former secretary Jennifer Kleesner, our membership engagement coordinator Amy Pierce-Standers, our private practice representative Preeti Vij-Gulati, business and industry representative Tristan Layfield, and our community government representative Nicole Smith. So this means that we do have a full board for the first time in a very long time. And if you've been following us for a while, we ourselves have been in the process of reinvention and really have been feeling this year we've been making great strides in moving forward. So with that, also wanted to welcome our new members. Many of you did take advantage of bundling together a year of membership along with the conference registration. So if you are new to us, I know that one of us, likely Amy, will be reaching out to you because we do want to make sure that the organization represents your needs and what you want to learn. Because again, we know that there's a lot of competition for our time and in our efforts. So if you are interested, if you've just joined and want to get even more involved, there are opportunities to join. We have committees, so the events committee, communications, and membership committee. We've also been working on adding regional representatives. And this is actually brand new to us. We recently had someone who is presenting today, Nick Boudre. He has agreed to be our inaugural regional representative and help us see how we can shape that. So representing the St. Clair region. And we kind of joked about if you're the regional representative and we're just getting started, you can kind of carve out as big of a space on the east side as you would like. So I want to thank him for getting that started for us. And then of course you can reach out to us at membership@michcda.org. If you are a social media user, we're using the hashtag today, 2021 MichCDA, and we will drop in the chat our link tree that directs you to all of our different channels. But do want to thank you for that. Also wanted to let you know about other opportunities that you can look forward to. So I will pass it over to Jennifer Kleesner, who has some additional great information for you.
Thank you, Laura. Hello and welcome, everyone. So glad that you are joining us today. I would like to go ahead and highlight a couple of opportunities. First, our December Career Cafe. The topic is supporting students and clients in navigating racial disparities in hiring practices. We have a wonderful guest speaker, Jennifer Wint. So be sure to check that out. More details on our MichCDA.org website. Also, November is National Career Development Month, so we invite you to celebrate by participating in the 56th Annual Poetry and Art Contest. We will organize that first through our MichCDA, so the state chapter. Details on that can be found at mcda.org. I'll drop a couple of those links in the chat in a moment. And I wanted to let everyone know, first, if you're a K-12 educator in need of sketches, there will be a link provided at the end of the last session. It's $10 to apply for the sketches, and you have until Friday, November 22nd to complete this process. We will also provide that link in a follow-up email when we send it to all participants at the end of the conference, either late this afternoon or Monday morning. Regarding those additional sketches. If you are in need of NVCC or GCDF credits, our conference are eligible for those credits too. Certificates of attendance will be emailed following the conference as well. And we just wanted to let you know that attendance for our sessions will be recorded via the Zoom login reports, and we ask you to attend the sessions in their entirety to receive credit. One additional note, although the sessions are being recorded today, please attend the live sessions to receive those continuing education credits. And one final housekeeping note, I wanted to bring attention to our 1 p.m. session and just have everyone make sure they understand that you will attend 2 sessions during that hour of 1 to 2 p.m. They are each 30 minutes in length, so you have the opportunity to choose 2 sessions during that hour. First one being at 1 o'clock, second one being at 1:30. So look closely at the agenda for those details. Okay, thank you very much, Laura.
Thank you, Jennifer. So you can see we've got a lot going on. Really do want to support you no matter where you are. And that's a good reminder and just shows the representation that we have as an organization. MichCDA, what we really pride ourselves on is being able to represent career practitioners no matter the space that they are in. And you saw from the makeup of our board that we're very intentional about trying to bring you content based on where you are working with clients or students. So moving along, looking a little bit at our actual theme of resilience and reinvention. And I think just by virtue of us being here, we are exhibiting some resilience that we're still pushing on and attending Zoom conferences. I had the experience of attending an in-person conference for the first time this week. And I really felt like I had to relearn some social skills in the conference setting. Also meeting folks for the first time that I had only engaged with virtually. It almost felt like meeting a celebrity in some ways, like, oh, I've only seen you online and kind of read about you. So I know that many of us, we've been in different situations. Some folks have continued to be, out in the public throughout. Some are still maybe feeling isolated with the majority of their work taking place remotely. So I think this is a great time to reflect on how far we've come to this point. In preparing for this, I have a slide that has the links to the articles that I really enjoyed. But some of the components that make up resilience, the ones that I pulled out from the 7 that I'd read about were competence, connection, and contribution. And I think over the course of this day, and as I talk about reinvention as well, all of our sessions that we have really do speak or connect to both of our themes this year of resilience and reinvention. We hope that you do take advantage of the opportunity to connect with others and also to contribute through Q&A and in the chat. Definitely look up each other's names, make some connections on LinkedIn. So we hope that you're able to make the most of it. On reinvention, I think it's something that we have been hearing for a long time in terms of even just changing careers multiple times throughout, and that was pre-pandemic. So I think that we've seen all the more necessity for that to happen. But I also wanted to call out, this was actually just looking up the actual definitions. What does it actually mean to reinvent? And I was surprised to see that part of the definition is to bring into use again. So I think that's another really interesting perspective when we think about reinvention, to not only view it as something that we are lacking or that we have to acquire all things that are entirely new, but really going back to what your strengths are and what your interests are, and how can you just, I would almost say, revitalize what it is that you already leverage your strengths within. So I wanted to highlight that. And finally, In researching more about reinvention, and this really came from Dawn Graham, and again, the link will be available, but she highlighted reinventing in three key areas, and that was expertise, brand, and connections. And she had a lot of great things to say, but again, as I was preparing for this and looking at our sessions, it was like, wow, each of these sessions, I feel like by the end of the day, we have the opportunity to already start reinventing in these small ways. So when it talked about expertise, it talked about including trends, which Dr. Gardner is kicking off our conference speaking exactly to that. In reinventing brand, I saw that as a theme in several of our sessions. In reinventing connections, as it says here, your network is constantly evolving. And I really love here how it's not only about what others can provide to you, but what you can provide to others. So I think that's really key, that reciprocity in the work that we do is also, providing our gifts to others. So I hope that you found just this very brief kind of thoughts on our theme and reflecting on what it might mean to you. And certainly you will also have the opportunity to provide feedback again during the sessions, but also a survey at the end of the conference as well, because we do want to hear from you if you did find these benefits that we're hoping that you'll gain from this opportunity today. So thank you very much for the opportunity to address all of you. I'm very excited about today and want to thank sincerely each of our board members from the swag bags, which we hadn't done before, all of the conference promotion, which hopefully that is what brought you here today. But just want to thank the board so much for making this a success. And we doubled our conference participation from last year, which of course is not the same as when we're in person. But at the same time, we're very happy the second year doing a virtual conference to have increased our participation. And we're continuing to see participants join today. So with that, I do want to pass it over to Dr. Phil Gardner and to share a little bit more with you about him. Dr. Phil Gardner is the Executive Director of the Collegiate Employment Research Institute, also known as CERI, at Michigan State University. He has been at Michigan State for more than 30 years, and his major areas of research include the transition from college to work, early socialization, and career progression into the workplace. And Dr. Gardner, if there's anything else that you would like to share about your bio, please feel free. But I would like to turn it over to you to talk to us more about how COVID accelerated changes to the transition from college to work and an emerging look in the future. So let's please welcome Dr. Phil Gardner.
Thank you, Laura, for that introduction. I've known Laura for quite a while in several roles at MSU. She's now, you're with the College Advising Corps now, correct? I think you
Yes.
are. If you'd come earlier, I would have been your boss, but now I retired from the executive director role. So anyway, I've still stayed engaged with them with my research and doing the research on the transition from college to work and issues surrounding that. And what we're going to launch off of today is the most recent college labor market study that just came out. And I'm not going to delve into a lot of the dynamics of the labor market. I will give you an overview. But I'm going to talk about the changes in the transition experience that are going on as a result of COVID and what we might anticipate in the future. Now, most of my input and discussions on this are coming from the employer side today. So because of the mix of the group that's here today to share their thoughts and ideas, we're going to have to build these connections because it may not, everything I say may not resonate with those from particularly four-year schools, colleges, but I think you'll see in this a lot of the pathways that have to be reinvented, beginning with and connected between K-12, any post K-12 learning environment, whether it's a credential, a 2-year school or a 4-year school, and then that transition into the workplace. Now, to facilitate today, Laura's going to advance my slides just to minimize any problems I may have on my end. I've been having some issues and I don't want to get kicked out, but so far it looks pretty good. So we're going to go to the first slide and next slide, and Laura will advance that. Okay, what I'm going to do start with is give you an overview of the college labor market, and this will be mostly the 4-year and the associate degree labor markets. And what we're still in is this long historical period where we've seen some very aggressive college labor markets that began to emerge in 2010-11 after we came out of the recession. We've never had sustained labor market growth at this level in the 35 years that I've been involved with this project. That's saying a lot, that we've had a consistent need, and it goes way beyond the things you hear about, like engineering and computer science and IT. It was a demand for people, highly competent people in a number of different areas within organizations. Now, COVID came along and produced a bump in the road, and it slowed things down. What's noticeable here is that it really didn't crash the college labor market like a true economic recession or in the business cycle would do. In fact, except for those places that were hit hard with COVID early, which Michigan was one, college recruiting kind of limped its way through in 2020. Last year was more subdued, and it kind of just brought everything to a halt, mainly because everybody's trying to figure out how to deal with COVID. They had a lot of organizations had to trim expectations on hiring and things. So now going into this year, we see a huge surge in employment, particularly at the bachelor's and associate level, across the board, any way I can cut the data. And it's being pushed by 3 forces. One is this backed up demand that employers since spring of 2020 have had to defer filling positions, and they push them forward, and they've opened them this year. That's one, and that's a significant part of this. But the other part is we still have retirements, and they picked up and moved at a pretty fast clip because of COVID. We're more than halfway through the boomer group, that large population group. We're at the tail end. That end is smaller than the front end, so its impact is probably less pronounced compared to the front end, but they're retiring and they're doing it at a pretty good clip. So we got retirements in there, and then we're going to talk about this at the end. But we have this it's historical significant event going on where people are simply leaving their jobs. They're walking off and looking for something else. And it's not motivated by salary. It's motivated by a deep reflection on the value of work and what it means to them. And this is probably the most important shift that's going on right now. And I've saved it, and I'm going to come back to that at the end. But right now, if you're dealing with labor markets, if students are prepared and they understand, and we're going to get into some of that in a minute, they have a bounty of opportunities right now to engage them. Okay, so COVID was one of those black swan events, and that came along and really churns things up. Now, what COVID did was really accelerate changes in the workplace and the transition experience that's from college to work. So a lot of the recruiting activity that was starting to take place prior to COVID. It's the adoption of technologies, a shift from in-person, face-to-face recruiting to virtual digital applications. And that was emerging and was just taking off. And what COVID did, it forced everybody in the deep end of the pool. They've had to adapt. And what's going to happen is we're going to see some shifts. And we're going to see a change in the way that this space is being approached by all the actors that are involved. The rapid adoption of technology in the transition space is not temporary. It's not going to go away. What we're going to see is the continued adoption of different technologies in that transition space that is going to then cause ripple effects both into the organization as a new hire becomes socialized in the organization and begins to work, and backwards to how students then have to prepare for to reach that transition space. It's different, and it's going to require some mindset changes, and we're going to talk about those. So that's some common things that kind of we're looking at right now and how they're playing out. So we'll go to the next slide. And here, what we're seeing is a lot of digital and AI assisted technologies coming into play. You're probably most familiar with the digital technologies. These are virtual career fairs, virtual interviewing, virtual events that are being hosted. These virtual technologies and those aspects are here. The other part of this is AI assisted technologies. These technologies have more of a human interface where AI is acting more as a human assistant. These would be in the form of chat boxes, avatars, and places and things like that. You might be, those that are in career development may have already been experienced some exposure to AI assisted trusted advising. We're seeing that emerge in both the health field and in counseling, that there are AI assisted counseling that takes place. It's in its early stages, but it's beginning to be more widespread. Now, what's interesting here is that in the years prior to COVID, I was doing a lot of work on the adoption of technologies by employers in the recruiting space. And if you'd asked me 2 years and the year before prior, I said we wouldn't see even 50% of employers adopting any form of digital AI assisted technologies before 3030. Maybe we'll see it creep up between 2025 and 2030. Well, everybody went off the deep end, and 85% of employers are using digital and AI assisted technologies. And the one that's more interesting because it's coming on faster than anybody thought is AI assisted technologies. Back in, I said 2 years ago, less than 5% of companies were even exploring those. Now it's up to 45%. So we've moved pretty quickly along the adoption phase. These technologies are not, something that's going to solve every problem. In fact, the technologies still lag behind the hype, but there's a lot of work going on there. Having said that, I want to make it clear that the in-person, the personal connections, the personal element is critical in our environment. It's going to remain critical, and it's not in between the three, let's call the three parties, the employer, the career professional, and the student. And all those linkages are in person, though they will be facilitated by technologies. On the employer side, they are going to continue, but at more nuanced moments in the recruiting process. Some of them are going to start very early, and we've seen that movement take hold where they're going to start working with at the four-year schools with freshmen and sophomores. We're going to see more nuanced ways to invite students into personal conversations. They're going to do more, employers are doing more background. They have more information today on potential candidates than they ever had because of the way that the databases that house job mechanisms on campus, whether it's in the case of Michigan State, it's Handshake. There's more information on those profiles. There's more information on profiles in LinkedIn. There's a lot of doubt about using Facebook. I mean, Facebook's going through a new set of lenses on its value given the recent revelations about Facebook. But there's more information out there about students, and it's critical to maintaining these the new forms of labor market that are coming in. So what you're going to see in this moving forward is a very hybrid approach. You're probably already experiencing it on campus in your own recruiting environments, even after you completely open and COVID is under control. We're going to see these hybrid approaches that weave together both virtual and in-face techniques. But to handle this, we're going to have to shift mindsets in the way we think about what we do and how we do it. And for some of you on here, I think you'll be really pleased with this because I think it affirms probably what you've already talked about or in our learning in your own environments. So we'll go to the next slide. And here, the first thing I want to talk to you about is the things that students have to do, because it's really important that the students are now really key in all this, more so than they've ever been. The career service folks won't be the middleman and the brokering everything between the employer and the student. There's going to be more direct interface. So when we talk to employers about what they want students to know, it's not all about skills. I mean, the skills are still out there. It's just a given now. But what's really eclipsing everything, your attitudes, behaviors, and values, particularly in this COVID time. So here are some of the more attitudinal, behavioral kind of things that employers are pointing out that they need to see students demonstrate when they're interacting with them. I'm not going to talk about every one of these, but I will talk about a couple. Let's talk about adaptability first and reinventing yourself. Look, so everybody's had to adjust to COVID. They as I said, a rapid adjustment to the virtual space. It changed perceptions on how you did things, and you had each of us had to change in new ways in how we handled our work and our interactions and things like that. And students too, they had to do it twice. They had to do it in forms of going to online communities to learn. That was not something that they favored. There was a lot of backlash about that. And similarly, they've had to jump into a virtual environment in recruiting and talking with employers that they don't particularly care for. So employers are more interested in, well, how did you adapt? How did you change? How did you accommodate those things? Are you just going to sit there and whine all the time and complain? Or did you figure out new ways to go about how to approach this environment, how to deal with recruiting in the environment? Because it's not the ability to adapt and change and reinvent themselves really sends a strong message on not only their expectations, but how well they're going to adapt to the work environment, which is always changing, and they're going to have to adapt. And if they're resistant to being adaptable to unexpected situations, then they are going to have problems adjusting in the workplace. And that raises conflicts that companies are trying to minimize. So being adaptable and being able to explain how you adapted in during this COVID period says a lot about you. Open-minded and flexibility go together. They point out a lot of this, some of this has to do with being flexible about job requirements and what your expectations are in the workplace. They're changing rapidly. COVID caused a lot of changes, realignments, so students need to come in with a bit more flexible understanding of job requirements, whether it's location, the actual tasks that will be done, the kind of teams you'll be on, and things like that. Coupled with open-minded, the career pathways that they may have envisioned, a lot of may have been closed off. That may be temporary, but they're being altered and realigned. And so employers want you to be open-minded about being able to adjust your pathway expectations to the reality of the workplace. And students are struggling with that. They want them to be enthusiastic, just as enthusiastic online as they are in person. This is going to get, when I finish this section, I'll explain that more because it's really critical. They need to be creative in ways to show how they stand out in a virtual experience than they do in person. It takes, you have to approach it different. You might, and it stand out as hard. And in this current environment, one of the most important things that students can do is be more proactive. And I'm going to come back to this, but this means that they have to be able to step out and approach employers and connect with employers on their own. And I was surprised at how important that employers say this is, even in this time when everybody's just inundated and with clutter on their emails and their Zoom meetings and their YouTube channels and everything else. But employers are saying those students that have done a good job of preparing for the digital recruiting environment need to reach out. So these are behaviors and attitudes that just don't start in their senior year when they all rush into the labor market. These start very, very early in their learning environments, in their advising environments, and how to be aware of how a lot of different things that may not relate to their career at all are influencing how they're going to approach the labor market and enter the workplace. That means that their awareness has to be very high. They need to be more aware of their presence online, and we call it performing in the box. Just like I'm performing on your screen, you don't see me, but in an interview situation, the people are looking at each other. But their presence and what their background looks like, what a professional demeanor is, and a whole bunch of things that kind of are taken care of in person because you're expected to do certain things. But in the virtual environment, it's looser. The parameters could be looser, so the student has to step up and be much more aware of their presence. And also, it takes them their responsibility to manage their time better. They can't be no-shows. They can't come into an event unprepared. They need to be certain that they meet their obligations. And so what employers are saying is they're running into time management problems. The student schedules a virtual interview and then doesn't show because they want to go out and stand in line to get ISO tickets to the Michigan State basketball game or something like that. Those trade-offs are very important to the student, which means the student mindset is going to have to change here about this, because students dismiss the virtual environment as a lesser a lower caste environment, that it's just temporary, and we'll get back to where I'm important, and that's in the face-to-face, because employers are coming to campus to talk to me, and therefore I'm important. And the role, and that there's a subtle shift in the virtual environment, so that they don't like that. For the employer side, the virtual environment and the in-person environment are equal. They're critically important to their talent management. A lot of employers, they don't prefer the virtual environment, though there's huge benefits for them that the company will probably have to leverage, and it will require them to stay doing a lot of activities virtually. But students have to come in with the mindset that this is important. They can't discount this. And so their mindset is going to have to change. So let's go to the next slide. Okay, so on the career management side, having to do with many of you, some of the things that employers are talking about is that need to happen occur in our space. They want to message out the career pathways that we spend a lot of time trying to articulate, and it's very important, are in flux in organizations. They're the rapidly changing workplace, the realignments, the redundancies that are being eliminated, the technology-assisted environments that are being created are altering their career pathways, and some are going to be blocked. It's kind of like chaos theory here, because they're reforming their career pathways. So it's going to take students more time to grasp a hold of those. And while we want them to have a good sense of their career pathways from the time they leave high school through whatever post K-12 experience they have into the workplace, they have to go back to those critical fields of adaptable and flexible and open-minded, because these career pathways are going to change, and they can change quite quickly. And so we have to prepare students to have a better plan, a passion with a plan, which means they have to be aware of these career pathways. We also have to recognize that these pathways are going to be in flux. So that means our responsibility is going to be hard. We're going to have to keep up on a lot of changes in the workplace that we don't. Just for doing my job, which is to study this, I have to read constantly on this, and I know that this isn't the thing that a lot of people like to do, but there's so much going on, and it depends on where you are. What's going on in Silicon Valley and right now in IT and computers and engineering, computer science is transformative in the way they're organizing their workforce. Will that play out in the Midwest? Probably not. But does that mean the young people that we have, or any of the adult learners or anybody that we have, won't have opportunities in Silicon Valley? They'll probably actually increase. And here's the big one, and the one that there'll probably be a significant discussion about at some point. In the process of what we're developing, students now are responsible to self-manage their job opportunities. Okay, what this means is that with the technologies and what's happening is now the interface between the employer and the student or the job seeker is almost immediate. In the college environment, we used to having a mediator there. That's the career service folks with event planning, with managing interview schedules, with all kinds of ways to guide students and meet those employers. Now that systems that employers use where they can engage students everywhere, and that's one of the biggest changes now. Employers now are recruiting across the country, even though they have more regional specific targets. Any student is now available to them, and students likewise have to understand that any employer is available to them. So they're going to have to manage that space. They're going to have to take more control of doing the work that they need to do to identify opportunities, to connect and be proactive with employers, to start those conversations, And also to respond to the invitations that they have from employers. Some of them they don't want, that's fine. But others, they may not know the company, they may not understand what's available. This is going to be the big thing, and it comes with a big but. I like self-advocacy. I think students should have been doing this a lot longer, but the problem is that a lot of students don't have a familiarity with the workplace. They're particularly our first generation low income students, many of them students of color, are disadvantaged. They don't have confidence in approaching this space. They heavily relied on career and professionals and their academic advisors to help broker and help them in that space. And so it's going to take a lot of assistance and guidance to build the confidence and the abilities and the understanding of the dynamics of how to do this. And it's wonderful to say it, and I think it's great because I think that it will enrich students and ability to understand better what they want and try to lead them to more meaningful jobs than just applying for something because it's related to your major. But, and I just emphasize the but, this is not going to be easy, and a lot of students are just going to feel really adrift by this. So we're going to have a lot of work there. Okay, the next slide, please, as I got to wrap this up here, I think. So for as career professionals, here are some things that need to be done when happen. I think you're already doing them. There's more emphasis is going to be on guiding students in their understanding of the workplace, having them understand what the desired job characteristics they're looking for, doing more research prior to even beginning the job search on the kind of how industries differ, how different occupations differ. There too many students believe the major leads to one job, but even if they're in liberal arts, and they rush in at the very end of their college experience and try to plug into a job. And that doesn't work anymore. And so students have to be coached better and how to interact and how to do research. And at most colleges, the faculty are big on research and they want students to, and in the same way, we've talked about this for 35 years, but students now are in a place where they're going to have to do more research on the workplace and the opportunities out there. And it's not simply just about stepping up and I've got a diploma and now where's my job? And that's very short-sighted. The other thing they want is, see more assistance in students and how to navigate additional transition arrangements, how to use these databases, how to begin to build digital presence and how it differs. So this backs us up into a different place. Then we just can't do this at the very end in the semester they're graduating or their senior year. It's going to shift the mechanics from mechanics, which I mean their resume writing, cover letters, etiquette dinners, and those kind of things, which can all be handled online. There's so many tools out there now for that, into providing leadership in understanding workplace and coaching students and faculty about the changes that are going on so they have a better understanding of what they're doing and where it's going to lead them to. These are roles that all of you probably play right now. They're just going to be emphasized, and it's going to de-emphasize some of the stuff we spend a lot of time on, like resume writing, and it's critically important, but there's so many different ways to do that allow us to free up the limited professional time we have to focus on these needs that occur early. Okay, we'll go to one in the next slide. I think I can wrap this up. So one of the things that we're going to talk about is the labor shortage. It's on everybody's mind. It depends on where you're at. If you're out sitting out in Silicon Valley in California, it's crazy, crazy, crazy because they've changed and realigned their workforce, and companies are now, even small companies, coming in and allowing any people to work anywhere. They don't have to move into the Silicon Valley. And there's a battle going on because some of these companies are keeping their wages up. While Google came out, now they haven't acted on this, but they said, well, we're going to hire our workforce. If they want to work remotely, they're fine, but we're going to base their salary on the salaries in the area. So if I wanted to move to Bozeman, Montana, they're going to pay me the wage of an engineer in Bozeman, Montana. That's not going over very well. And so the other companies are capitalizing on this. But places like Silicon Valley, Austin, where there's very high cost of living, you're going to see some really major transformations in the work environment in organizations that can. However, the thing that's changing everything is what we call the Great Resignation. The Great Resignation is now is a major event that's undergoing. It's too bad that we labeled it, because it sends it down a certain limited pathways and how we're going to deal with it. But what we're talking about here is the quit rate. Now, if you're not familiar with the quit rate, the Bureau of Labor Statistics captures the separations from organizations every month. And what this separation number is made up of basically three components. It's looking at involuntary separations. Those are people that are asked to leave the organization or essentially fired. There's retirements, and those people are actually leaving the workforce and not looking for another job. And then you have voluntary quits, which are people like you and me that just are fed up with their job. They're looking for something else, and they're just walking with their feet and going. And in this climate, they're going out, and there's lots of opportunities. By calling it the Great Resignation, we missed really what's going on here. The Great Resignation will actually result in organizations being much more defensive and trying to stem the flow, and they'll focus on things like salary and maybe how much remote work people get, but that's not what's driving this. There was a very thoughtful article last week in Wired magazine that talked about the underlying shift in the value of work. Now, this doesn't mean that we're going to be idlers and shirk our responsibilities. We're going to work. But you have to understand that the boomer generation that's leaving has the highest work identity ever encountered in history. What that means is who we are and as an individual is so wrapped up into work. And what boomers did is they created 60-hour work weeks. And when I came in and higher ed, you used to have 3 to 5 papers to get tenure. Now you have to have 15 to 20, and you have to bring in $50 million worth of grants. It's obscene what the meritocratic system has done. And people are fed up with that. And what we've seen, if you followed any of the work that I've done on younger cohorts as they come in, ever since the Xers came in, there has been a disengagement from everything has to be about my work. And the millennials and the people that are coming after them are saying, look, there's things that are more important or equally important to work. My family, my spiritual growth, it could be whatever that individual thinks is important. And I'm not going to give those up in face of work. I'm going to work, and I'm going to do a great job, but I'm going to put boundaries around it. It's a major, major value shift that's going on here, and we known it was coming. And as soon as the boomers gets out of the way, we're going to see some of that being played as they get out of the way, more and more played out. And as boomers give up control of organizations and leadership, this is significant. This is going to have a big impact on how we work, where we work, when we work, and how we build these new communities around work that sustain the other aspects of our life. The other big problem that we have immediately in the workplace is the absence of women. More than 5 million women had to come out of the workplace to take as the pandemic many more than that, to take care of young kids, and they have not come back, and they're not counted in the unemployment rate. And getting them back in has been difficult. Now we'll see some encouraging signs when with the vaccine, if they choose to have the younger children vaccine, but that doesn't help kids under the age of 5, and for parents that have very young kids with childcare in complete disarray, because that's mostly low-cost labor, and all those people have been able to walk to higher paying jobs. And so women are at a disadvantage at all levels in the economy. When it comes to remote work, employers, particularly male managers, remain somewhat negative about remote work, and they particularly negative when women are in remote work, because they feel that they're probably taking care of children more than attending to work, which is not true by all the data we've collected out there, but there's a stigma. And women are looking for more flexible working arrangements. And so some of the walking that's going on is heavily influenced by trying to find things that accommodate family and things like that. But it's been hard to getting women back in. And I said, in the research universities, it's already been shown, if you follow the Chronicle Higher Education, that women in research positions have fallen behind men. Last year, over 60% of the MBA positions were filled by men, when in fact, the enrollment pattern in MBAs is more 50-50, mainly because women needed the flexibility and the ability to work remotely, at least part of the time, and that was not happening. So most of the positions went to men. I think the one that immediately affects everybody on this call is the widening gender gap in college and university, and the impact that's going to have on the talent pipeline. We've known there's been a gender gap with more women graduating than men. It's been about 2/3 women and 1/3 men for a decade now, but that's at the back end when they graduate. But now this gap is really wide at the front end of the admissions rate, even though many of your institutions are trying to desperately keep as close to a 50-50 split in admissions as possible, or slightly more women, but that can't happen when more than 70% of your applicants to college are women. And there's reasons for this. Not some of them are not well understood. On the women's side, where they are compelled and have a high motivation to attend college because the job opportunities that they can engage in post-college are significantly better than for women that leave high school or very limited post-K learning endeavors. They're just very low paying, they're dead-end jobs. And so women have a very compelling reason to go to college. Men, on the other hand, seem to have bought into the fact that college is a ripoff and there's no value in it for me. And they've been hesitant to go back. This is a problem because if men disengage from the educational post K-12 educational process, then that really affects our talent pipeline down the road. Men do have options for some high-paying jobs. They can in long-haul truck driving, though they have to get certified. They can be in construction and things like that. There's still those jobs available for them. The people that have been looking at that, my colleagues that have been looking at that, have to say it has to do with more that men are still struggling to find out what their role is. They're adrift. And they're finding it difficult to land. And I think those that are in the K-12 system, the early post K-12 environment are probably encountering this already. And this is going to be something we're going to have to wrestle. We're going to have to deal with and figure out how we keep men on track to understand that some form of educational and attainment of proper credentials to get in the workplace, to get meaningful jobs is to their benefit. We have this another one is a lifetime of woe. This college debt is become increasingly serious, and it's particularly affecting students of color. There was a report that came out a month ago that was highlighted nearly everywhere in the national press about the impact of student debt on Black households in their 30s with college degrees, and how the college debt has eroded those degrees, their income, household income, while at the same time their white counterparts' income has actually grown. This implication for debt, college debt, and the cost of college, we take it, we have a lot of discussion on it, but we don't seem to get any traction to get it resolved. I think companies are taking some of the initiative here by opening different pathways and different ways to get students engaged, and so they can get some livable wages, so they can get into learning environments that it doesn't cost them much. We're going to see a lot of discussion of this, but we just cannot have entire decades some of our talented people incomes completely wrong. They can never engage in the economy in any meaningful way with that. And so the cost of college is going to be the thorn, the Achilles heel of four-year schools that just don't understand, and the tuition keeps going up. Some other things that I need to move on, because I think I'm used up all my time. Just to figure out, we're going to have tailored college experiences. The traditional come to college 4-year experience on campus is going to be engaged by fewer and fewer students that can afford that experience. Many of the students are going to engage college in many different ways, and that's on our doorstep, and it's coming, and we have to be prepared for that. Laura, I think I'm going to go to any last minute questions. I think I've taken way too much of your time. I got trapped up in my story. So why don't we figure out how you want to end this? I think I was only supposed to have a half hour. And I took
No, this was exactly as much time as we allocated. We do have 2 minutes for any burning questions, but I certainly appreciate the depth that you were able to provide. And I know that we'll have the opportunity for the recording to go out where folks can study the slides even a little bit more. As April said, this was so important, surely timely. So we're having a lot of great comments supporting that there were a lot of takeaways, great presentation. So it seems like all of our attendees are.
What I hope to have done was set out everything I talked about could take a whole day of discussion by your group. Our landscape is changing. So I hope I provoke some conversations, and some of your other speakers will obviously touch upon many of the things that I talked about. But for those, I just want to commend the professionals that are sitting out there that are in these spaces. You're under-resourced, you're understaffed, you've got so much responsibility for so much more than ever before, and it's only going to be magnified by the changes that are going on. And whether we can get the K-12 system and the post-secondary system, all of its different facets, to work together to align students so they understand better what's going to be expected of them, and all the things that they get to engage in to get there are going to be fun. They're going to be learning and new things, but the responsibilities shift on what we do, and it's important to understand that, and we're going to have to take action. We just can't sit and talk about it. Okay, so I hope you guys have a great day. I'm retiring fully almost now. I'm 75, and boomers need to get out of the way sooner or later. So.
Well, Dr. Gardner, we appreciate your time so much. I really do believe this was a fantastic way to kick off our day together. So thank you. We really appreciate it. So that does bring our opening keynote session to a close. We do have a 10-minute break before you would join your breakout sessions. We can quickly drop in the Zoom link to make it easy for you to see the other sessions and join. But we look forward to seeing you throughout the day. And definitely believe that we have a lot to think about that we can discuss over lunch for those who are interested. So thank you all. We look forward to a great rest of the day.